Hey, welcome back to Max Fitness Training Tips. I'm here with my good friend Herbie. How you doing, Herbie? Yeah, going good, hey man. Now you can see Herbie's got a bit of a splitting headache. He's sort of lost his head a bit, so let's see if we can put him back together and crack his head open. There we go. Now you can see his beautiful face. Now I brought Herbie today because, as you can see, Herbie has no muscles. You can see all of his joints. And the joint I want to talk to you about today is the shoulder joint, or particularly the glenohumeral joint, and how it moves in conjunction with the scapulothoracic joint. Now, the most common injury about the shoulder joint will be shoulder impingement, shoulder tendonitis, shoulder tendinopathy, or a tear of the supraspinatus tendon. Now, impingement, generally speaking, is where the tendon that sits underneath the acromion process, which is one of your rotator cuff tendons, which is your supraspinatus, and that sits on top. That's the muscle that sits on top here, just in your supraspinous fossa. And as you already know from your initial training, underneath that you have your other rotator cuff muscles, your infraspinatus, your teres minor, and then underneath the scapula you have your subscapularis. But because the supraspinatus sits on top and runs underneath, and you can see my little finger popping through here, and it runs and it attaches onto the head of the humerus, it has a greater potential to be impinged between the acromion process and the head of the humerus. So it has a greater chances of getting impinged between these two articulating surfaces. Now, movement patterns that increase that chances from impingement of that tendon will be anything above your head for one. The reason for that is that your humerus can come up to about 80 to 90 degrees shoulder abduction, and any higher than that, the head of the humerus comes in contact with the acromion process. So to go any higher than this, my scapula has to start to upwardly or laterally rotate to keep the glenoid cavity underneath so I can cup the head of the humerus. But as it goes up, it's going to increase the chances of that impingement between those two bony surfaces of your supraspinatus. Now, it's designed to do that, that's fine. What it's not designed to do is do that on a repetitive nature with a load, and sometimes even with a long lever with a load at the end of the lever. So what you're doing is, even though that joint is designed to do that for mobility and hunting and so on, what it's not designed to do is to do that in a repetitive nature under heavy loaded circumstances. So when you're designing exercises for your clients for around the shoulder joint, as soon as you do exercise with a weight above the head or up here, or you start slinging the weight up here or coming up in front, what you're doing is that you're, how can you say, exaggerating or accelerating the wear and tearing effect of your tendon, your supraspinatus tendon, between the acromion process and the head of the humerus. So my suggestion is just be aware of the consequences of your exercise prescription on the long-term effect of a person's joint, particularly the tendon in the shoulder joint, because that is a very common injury, and you speak to any physio or chiropractor, and I've been in sports conditioning and in this profession for 33 years, and I've come across this in young guys and young girls who have been training, but what they're doing is they're doing all these exercises to train the deltoids, which gets trained in all your other basic movements anyway, but they're doing these specific exercises to try to train their deltoids, which is really specifically targeting the supraspinatus, which is specifically wearing that out more than what it needs to. Therefore, the long-term effects of that will you start to get inflammation in the tendon, which is tendonitis, wear and tear of the tendon called tendinopathy, and eventually you start to get tendon tears and you may need to have an operation. And I've dealt with this many times in sport. Now, the movement patterns to just be aware of that really put the tendon in that prime position for, say, impingement or wear and tearing is with your shoulder is abducted and medially rotated. If you look at any sport that involves abduction and medial rotation, such as baseball, throwing, swimming, freestyle, or butterfly, or leg spin bowling, those sports are very inundated with rotator cuff injuries. And I've worked with some of those sports in my younger years as a sports conditioner, and I spent a lot of time trying to mend and rehabilitate people's shoulders. So I don't want you to be the challenge and you to be the cause to someone's ongoing or future injuries due to poor exercise prescription. So when you're prescribing exercise, it's always pretty good to overload down here, such as a bench press or a row, with your elbows in or abducted, because that takes, when your shoulders are abducted, it takes the increases the space between the acromion process and the head of the humerus, where you'd be rowing or chin-ups this way, or rows this way, or bench presses here. But as soon as you bring your arms up here, like a wide bench press or high bench press, or pressing out here with your shoulders up here, anything up here is going to cause some form of impingement. Wide grip chin-ups is going to put your shoulders in that compromising position. So remember, when you're training your clients, you want to make sure you train the muscles while protecting the joints and protecting the tendons. You don't want to be training the muscles while wearing out the joints and wearing out the tendons, because when the joints and the tendons are worn out, you're not going to be able to train the muscles anyway. And the number one rule as a fitness professional is I will not hurt my client. So it's really important for you to get a good understanding of the anatomy of all the joints. We just talked about shoulders today, and understand what you're doing to the joints by training targeted muscle groups, where you could actually be causing long-term damage to the tendons or the joints while getting short-term gains on the muscles. Try to look at ways to get the gains in the muscles while protecting the joints and the tendons, because those body parts don't recover very well because they don't have anywhere near as good a blood supply as the muscles. So to finish off, know your anatomy of the shoulder joint. Know the main injuries that occur and why they occur, and make sure that you're not contributing to your client's injuries or discomfort and long-term challenges. Remember, train the body while train the muscles while protecting the joint. What do you think about that, Herbie?
That sounds really clever, Kman.
Yeah, so let's be a clever trainer. That way we can call you a fitness professional who knows their stuff. We'll see you in the next tips. Okay, Herbie, let's go and play some soccer. What do you reckon?
Okay, Kman.
You're no muscle, mate. How are you going to kick a ball?